I'm so excited, I finally finished the boat and I'm taking it on my first sail. I just hope I wired the batteries correctly. What a nightmare. I'm Brian. Join the adventures as I share what I learned restoring a hurricane-damaged catamaran with the dream to sail the world. I've now arrived at what is definitely the most difficult part of this whole project, of the entire project, of both of stuff to come and stuff that I've done already. And that is figuring out how to fix the gigantic hole. A couple options I've got is go vertically with this and maybe overshoot it and come up higher, and then I can trace from the other side of the deck, put that on there, trace it, and then figure out where the deck will land and then put the deck on top. I've got that option. Or build the deck out farther and then get the deck in position and then line the other piece up to it. So a couple options. I haven't figured out which one's the best. Now I've got a real hole in my boat. It's still got to get bigger. So in the aft cabin, this is the part that's going to take the most line up to get all of this stuff and back in position where this is pushed down. For me, it's really important that we get this lined up just perfect, because why go through all this work only to do a halfway job and have the boat bent at a weird angle? I'm pulling this back out here and I'm finding a little bit more damage. But the question is, if I was expecting it to be more damaged than I was thinking it was, and it's more damaged than I was expecting, is it really more damaged than I was expecting because I was expecting it to be more damaged? There's something oddly satisfying about knocking these big chunks of bearing compound out. I don't know why. And some of the boat has, you'd think, well, this is a lot of fairing compound, but this is really lightweight stuff. This doesn't weigh anything. Some of the other areas of the boat, they used a structural filler. This is just a fairing filler. So it's really lightweight, but the structural filler is much heavier. There's the pile of junk from today, or at least part of the junk from today, clearing out that master cabin. Down in here, we've got the water maker. And it's mounted on this piece of plywood, but you can see that plywood is separated slightly from the bulkhead, and that bulkhead, as you can from the other side, is cracked. And so this is why it's important. You got to take everything apart and make sure we're good. So I'm going to pull all this stuff out, pull that plywood out. Well, I'm making progress, getting this area a little cleaned up. But I still got to get this board out. And it's got probably like 5,200 behind it. Maybe 4,200, whatever. And it's just not coming out. So there's a secret when you're dealing with 5,200 to get it off, and that's heat. So let me see what I can figure out for this. I find the process is pretty much the same for all these parts. First thing you do is you gut it. Clear everything out you can. The next step, once you have it gutted, is to get everything aligned. Align it up, jack it up, get it back in position. Then replace the foam, kind of get the shape back, put a coat of glass on. That's been my plan for everything. And then once I have everything in that state, that I have the boat back into the shape that I wanted in, I'll go through and apply all the layers and finish it all off. So the process is just going through and jacking up everything and getting it to align, and it's kind of interesting here. You can see it, how much it moves. And one of the things that I noticed on this, it did tend to separate that bulkhead in the back where it had compressed down. So I'll be sure to make that solid when I get back into it. If you saw me building templates for the foam before, I was using paper, and someone suggested using plastic. Well, this is the real stuff to use. if you got it available to you and you're not too cheap. This guy here, it's like plastic that's reinforced so that it doesn't stretch, and you can take an accurate template. I got to do the biggest template ever, which is going to be the entire side of the boat. So I got a whole bunch of it. So my plan was to start with the side of the boat that was good and basically figure out what the shear line is. Or as the deck curves around, I could figure out exactly where the windows are and what that shear line in the deck was. So I was just using some mastic tape that's used for vacuum bagging and some masking tape to get it to stick in there and to line up the way that I wanted. Once I have it done building the shape so that I know what the side of the boat is, then I transferred it over to a piece of wood. And this piece of wood is going to make my form that I'm going to use to rebuild the other side that matches. One of the tricks that you can see me doing there with the level is, because the plastic still will twist and turn a little bit, I'll make a straight edge. I'll make a straight line on the plastic mark, and then I'll come back, and when I'm putting it here, I'll make sure that that straight line is still straight. And that ensures that curve across the top will be the correct angle. The other thing, in order to get the curve fair, is I use a piece of wood and just kind of form it along the edge to make sure I get it fair. You can see me here screwing that in to make it fair. I'll mark it, and then, of course, cut it out. I wanted to say thanks for all the great comments that I've been getting. One of the things that people were saying is that I'm a great teacher and that I'm doing a good job showing you how to do fiberglass work. Well, I really don't feel that good about that because I'm certainly not a fiberglass expert. Now, I've studied a lot and I understand a little bit more from the engineering side, but as far as from the actual practical side, this is one of my first projects, and so it's a little bit difficult. If you want to see real good fiberglass work, you need to look at someone from like Ross on Life on the Holes in his composite shop. You watch that channel and he'll really show you how to do it because he had the experience, and mine is just kind of a learn as I go. And I will tell you that I'm much farther along than these videos have because I took some time off work, and I am starting to get the hang of doing the good fiberglass work. And I wanted to say thank you for all the guys that are leaving comments. Of course, I don't take all of them too serious, but I've had some great information and some very entertaining comments. So hopefully you liked the last episode where we had that comment, and I'll probably do that again once I get a few more good comments. Behind me is the largest hole I've just cut in my boat. Hopefully the largest hole that'll ever be in this boat. It's over 10 feet long. It's quite big. And so I've got to figure out how to get this back in, and I've been thinking this over for, well, realistically for months, but certainly for the last couple of weeks as I've finished up some of the other areas, trying to figure out how I can get this back in shape. So I got a plan. So I already laser leveled, like you saw earlier. I laser leveled to get the deck in the right position, and I have boards holding it up, etc. But that shear line, getting that in position is going to be pretty tough. So I'm going to use the panel that I cut from the template of the other side and put it here. That'll give me the curvature of the shear line. Then I'm going to take a board, probably a 1x4, and run it flat across the top, and it'll flex to match the shear line. And I'm going to do that just below where the foam should sit. Then I should be able to just set the foam on top, and it'll be good. Now I'm going to overhang it about probably a good 2-3 inches. And then I'll glass it all and get it all done on the top. Then what I'll do is I'll come back out and grind the foam out, and then I'll build the wall, I don't know if it's called a wall, the whole side, back up to fit back in to that deck that should be in place now. So that's my plan. So with a plan in place, I start building the form. You can see this 1x4 that I'm putting up here that's going to have the shear line. Then I'm taking the other board that I cut that has the exact shear line on it, and I'm using the windows to line it up. So then it'll match the same on the other side. Then basically screw it together, and I'll have that shear line back in place exactly where it needs to be. Now I just need to make sure that I've got the right offset to have a piece of foam in there, and that it'll, with the foam and the fiberglass, will be the exact right height. Next, I put the piece of board on top that will provide the support for the foam. Yeah, I think it's looked pretty good. Put a little paint on it, no one will notice. There we go. Getting the all templated for the foam. I got the form set up with this board recessed 3/4 of an inch so that the foam will tuck right up in there and the foam will come right through. Check this out. The foam is now fit into place, and I gotta fix this area here. It's tied in, and then once I have this all tied in, I will just build this out. I'll cut this back, grind that back, and lay glass on the whole thing. Probably need to get that little section fixed up too. This is kind of a fun part, just like sculpturing. You just shape it till it matches the other side. A lot of checking with the angles on this side versus checking on the other side to make sure that it's going to just be exactly symmetric. After I shape this section of foam here on the top, which just takes a lot of careful carving to get it all lined up, I need to build some forms for the underneath. And I just use that thin plywood and just kind of put it in shape, use that, some duct tape, some random stuff, some plastic just stuffed in there to get the shape. And then once I get the shape close, I'll put some filler in and carve it so it looks nice before I really putting the strength layers on. Here I just use some of the structural adhesive that I mix up with vinyl ester resin and some of the fillers to where the deck drops down here to the lower section. There was a big damaged area, and so I ended up cutting out like, I don't know, 1.5 or 2 feet so that I could rebuild it. And so you see me there kind of carving it to get that new piece of wood in there to make the form. Then I go through and feather the edge on everything and get it all prepped up so that I can lay the first layer of mat on there. I know what you guys are excited for. Another full episode of solid grinding time lapse. Well, I grind this away for the next hour or so. Just kidding. So a bunch of people say I should get a gel coat grinder like in Barefoot Dive and Sail. Anyway, Dave down there in Luperon, fixing his catamaran, he got a gel coat grinder. And I thought about it, and those are awesome tools, and it'd be really great to have one. But they're like over $1,000, and I'm probably at least 25% done with the work I would be able to use the gel coat grinder on. Not that I'm 25% done with the grinding. I got a lot more than that, but the gel coat grinder is only good for certain things. And I've got a pretty good system. If you look at what I just ground here, so what I do is I hit it with my grinder with the flap disc on it, and then I take down basically the gel coat, and I watch for it pretty careful, and you get the hang of it, right? After a few hours of grinding, a lot of hours of grinding, you get the hang of it, and I can take just the gel coat down until it hits, and it does make a rough surface because you don't get it real accurate. But then my belt sander, and if you've done woodwork, the next best thing to a planer, which is equivalent to a gel coat grinder, is a belt sander. It's not a planer, but it's the next best thing. So that works really well, and I'll run that belt sander over it, and so like this whole area I did in about 15 minutes. So it probably takes me twice as long as maybe a gel coat peeler, but I can get angles, like I got this curve angle here, which is super nice, and so it does a pretty good job, and I got really good control. I can take down exactly the layers that I want. So I rough it in, take out the thick stuff with the grinder, and then go back with the belt sander. And the belt sander is also really good for feathering because you don't want to dish it when you feather. You want a nice gradual ramp so that it can it can bond at each layer as it goes up. You don't want to dish, which is typically what happens with a grinder. So I love my belt sander. It's been working good. And I scored on some discs. You know, Amazon, I don't know, sometimes they make a mistake. And I got like a case of belts for this thing that are like 50 grit, which work perfect, for like 50 cents each. So I start with just a layer of mat underneath to create a good binding surface, and also it works good for building the form out. Once I get the shape and I get it faired exactly how I want it, then I'll go ahead and put the additional strength layers on top. Then after that, you go through and roll it to get the bubbles out. One of the things I've found is this vinyl ester is really thick and it's really hard to get the air bubbles out, but it makes for a really strong laminate. I started the composite test. I built some samples and tested them, and I'm probably going to show that in the next video where I break the panels that I made. And I was almost ready to switch to epoxy. So next episode, we're going to talk about epoxy and vinyl ester and see the real difference between the two in a real world test with my load cell. So some pretty cool stuff, so be sure to stay tuned. I also took about 2 weeks off of work at the end of the year, and I got a whole bunch of stuff done on the boat. So I'm excited to show you that as well. It really helps my channel if you like it, if you subscribe, and also if you leave a comment. That really helps my promotion. So if you enjoyed this at all, please help me back by liking the video. Also, I wanted to take a quick moment to thank my Patreons, Ken, David, Mark, Verum, Don, Blue Dog, Glenn, and David. Thank you for making this possible. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up in future episodes. And there may be some changes coming up in the future that I'll be able to do more stuff. I want to have more time to get some merchandise out and to do some cool stuff. So stay tuned as we get this boat done and go sailing. And hopefully don't explode it.